Hari Om, everyone. Hari Om. Let me just pull up Sadhana Panchakam so we're ready to... Okay. So let's go ahead and start with opening prayers, and then we'll chant the first verse of Sadhana Panchakam. Just before we started to check that last week you were able to see, we spoke about the introduction to Sadhana Panchakam, right? And we chanted the first verse and got into the very first step, right? Okay, so we will start with chanting the first verse, and then we'll get back into where we left off last week. All right. Take a deep breath in. Let it all out. Take a deep breath in. Om Vakratunda Mahakaya Suryakoti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kuru Me Deva Sarvakaryeshu Sarvada Saraswati Namastubhyam Varade Kamarupini Vidyarambham Karishyami Siddhir Bhavatu Me Sada Gurur Brahma Gurur Vishnu Gurur Devo Maheshwaraha Gurureva Param Brahma Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So shall we do lead and repeat for the first verse, or shall we go straight into it? Lead and repeat? Okay. If I have a few people that want lead and repeat, let's do lead and repeat. All right. Again, I apologize if I break the meter somewhere where I'm not technically supposed to, but we'll go word by word here. Vedo nityam adhiyatam taduditam karma svanushtiyatam teneshasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajyatam papogaf paridhuyatam bhavasuke dosho nusandhiyatam atmecha vyavasiyatam nijagrahat turnam vinirgamyatam. So now let's chant this together. Vedo nityam adiyatam taduditam karma svanushtiyatam teneshasya vidhiyatam apachitihi kamye matistyajyatam papogaf paridhuyatam bhavasukhe dosho nusandhiyatam atmecha vyavasiyatam nijagrahat turnam vinirgamyatam. Yeah, the long meters will take a while to catch on to. So, we had seen that last week it takes a bit of evolution and maturity in living one's life to even come to the doorsteps of Shastra to seek answers for questions that may arise along that path of maturity. That if we lived as our mind said, as our emotions dictate, as our thoughts arise, as and when it comes up, if I followed it like that, then I'm no better than an animal. Because that animals also by nature follow their instincts without any other capacity within them to override those instincts. So this is why Puja Gurudev says, for those that are unmature, he labels them as animal man. The mental thinking and actions performed is no better than an animal. But when such pursuit and living leads to unfulfilled desires, constant repetition of dissatisfaction and sorrow, at some point, that's usually when we start asking the question, why? Is there something better than this? Why is all of this happening? That's when we genuinely start asking for deeper meaning and understanding of the universe that I live in. That is when we start to come knocking on Shastra's door. And even then, it might take us a while. The questions may be building within our own mind, the bhava, and it's called mumukshutvam, desire to be free. It slowly has to build and build and build. And when we're lost in that dark, we have to feel things around for a little bit until we actually find the light switch, and it takes a while. So in today's day and age, we have so many different paths, different philosophies, different systems of thinking that bombard us when we're looking for answers. Especially being in the US, we're exposed to so many other things that we may not find back in India. Meaning the Western culture, or psychology, or science, or just Christianity, or Islam, or any other religions that is commonly practiced here. We are exposed to all of it far more than we would have been in India. In India, we have Hinduism as the main culture there, so it's unquestionable that we would instinctively go to Hinduism to seek for answers if we grew up there. So it will take us a while to come around to the Shastras saying, actually, this is where I will get answers. And that will take some time. And there was one author, I had read his biography, Sitaram Goyal, on how I became a Hindu. And he talked about how this was during that volatile time in history where India still hadn't gained its independence. And it was during that time that his family grew up in Hinduism, he was exposed to the ideas, but he left it. Then he joined communism, then socialism, then he understood the other religions as well. And each time he really spent time and came to believe in those systems for a good while. Sitaram Goyal ji is he's almost a genius in his intellectual capacity. So he studied their philosophies. But at the end of each of those phases, he mentioned that there was still something lacking in a comprehensive approach to answering those okay, I have to be careful with this. That he felt that there was still elements missing that will not comprehensively answer what is universe, what is my role, what is the guidelines of which I should live by. And so at the end of how I became a Hindu, he said, then I saw myself come back to my roots, come back to what my parents and grandparents, things that I grew up with, and I sat and studied it just like I would study socialism, communism, whatever other aspects he studied. And he came to realize that there is no other system of thinking that is so well thought out and so well tested too through the generations of Guru Shishya Parampara. That was one author that I read. Our own Puja Gurudev went through that as well. Same time frame. He was in fact an atheist. Last class I mentioned, right? Even our own high schoolers will say, I'm an atheist, I don't know, maybe spirituality. It takes time. Our own Puja Gurudev had to ask, okay, what do you actually have to offer? Let me study it well. And then let me declare to the world, is this true or not? And what happened to Puja Gurudev? He became our guru. He himself spent that time with Tapovan Maharajji, himself realized the truth of what had to say, and he, with compassion, came down from the Himalayas and shared, saying, if you have questions, let me make this as available as possible and remove as many obstacles there are between you and the answers here. So it takes a while. But once we do, we are now intent and interested in what can I do to evolve further. I've gained a little bit of maturity. I've gone from animal man to man-man. Now I'm ready to take the next stages. What can I do? That is when Adi Shankaracharya ji, as his last lesson, as his last text given to his students, was this, Sadhana Panchakam, and we take this as the first text to study. Because in these 40 instructions in 5 verses, he goes from beginning to end on all the things we need for every stage of our life. So we'd seen in this first verse that we are entering the examination of what the Brahmacharya ashram is all about. And it is the first sopana. Sopana, not soap opera, not soap. Sopana means the first step. And we see, Vedo nityam adhiyatam. Vedaha nityam adhiyatam. The final goal is given in the last verse. Atha param, thereafter, sthiyatam, be established in the oneness, so Brahman Atmanam, in that oneness between Brahman and Atman, meaning in that ultimate reality, that is what you are gaining. This is the last instruction given in Sadhana Panchakam. This is where we're headed. But established in that is not possible right now. So we have to start then with study the Vedas daily. Now when we translate that word, there was an interesting conversation I had in the comparison of language itself. I kind of tend to say that English is a very egocentric language. Why? Because the sentence won't make sense until the subject of the sentence is presented first. I, you, me, them, we, that is very prominent in that sentence. And English naturally has an active voice. Active voice versus passive voice. The example is, I went to the forest, is the active voice. To the forest I have gone, is the passive voice. So where is that emphasis? Where is the focus in that sentence? Even though the sentence is one and the same, where is the weight in that sentence? I went to the forest. To the forest I have gone. So where is that focus? So English has a tendency to put the subject and the agency of what it has doing as the prominent weight in that sentence. But does that match the philosophy of Shastras? When the whole point of Shastras is to get rid of the ego, to even give up this attachment to agency. What does my ego have to do in this entire universe when Bhagavan Ishvara is the one who has created this, sustained this, and also dissolves this? Where is my ego in all of this? Nothing. My sadhana is to diminish that. So we see that natural shift in Sanskritam. Vedaha nityam adhiyatam. So in a more closer translation to the bhava that sentence has is, let the Vedas be studied, and by you is implied because of the way that adhiyatam is connotated. You remember how many of you have actually somewhat taken Sanskritam class in high school, like in your schooling? So a little bit, right? Do you remember the dreaded moment where you have to sit and memorize tables of grammar? Rama, Ramaha, Ramo, Ramanam. But what is that nature? That Ramaha, Ramo, Ramaha. That ending tells you what is the relationship. It is first person singular, second person dual, or third person. The subject is inbuilt into that, therefore you don't even have to mention it. It's like the subject is hidden in, so you don't actually pay attention to it. So let the Vedas be studied, parentheses, by you. So it's really important to connect with our language because it is the framework on which we build our worldview. Ego is not the subject of this action. The action is being done. Therefore, passive voice becomes very important. If you speak any Indian language, whether it's Kannada, Telugu, Tamil, Malayalam, Hindi, Gujarati, any of those languages, just sit and think about how you say things. Isn't the subject always put aside? Therefore, it's important to stay connected to our language. It helps reinforce those ideas. So, Vedaha nityam adhiyatam. As soon as you're given an instruction, do this. What do our kids say? Why? This is the first question that comes up, and it should be asked, actually. We shouldn't push away or diminish the value of asking. Because of all the religions, of all these systems of thinking we have, Vedanta and Shastras encourage lovingly, please ask why. Understand the deeper meaning of things, and that can only happen when you ask. In one of Bhagavad Gita verses, it says, Pariprashnena sevayam. One of the duties of a student is to ask questions. Ask why. Ask. That is the only way we grow. So, what are the knowledges that is meant to be learned, and for what purpose? Vedaha. What is that knowledge, and what is it for? So, with other forms of knowledge, you have things like biology, chemistry, physics. Biology studies the functions of living systems. Chemistry talks about how chemical, organic, or inorganic react and combine together. Physics is just the laws of how this world works. So that's an external subject. And in fact, in today's age, the subjects of field of study is evolving eternally. There's when I was speaking with high schoolers now who are just entering college, I asked them, so what major are you thinking of? New fields are coming up. What is the latest one is AI. I think that's become highly popular and very in demand right now. AI is a new subject. Then gaming. What? There's a subject for gaming? We always yell at the middle schoolers, stop playing video games. And now they've created a whole subject field out of this. So the specialization is infinite. Because as the human needs arise, a following of that field of knowledge is given. So specializations are infinite. But when we say Vedaha is here, what type of knowledge are we talking about? This is all knowledges that are meant for living my life. So is there science of how to live life? Or is it that we ignore it saying, oh, no, we're secular, we don't need to talk about all that. We just need to focus on how to make money, we don't need to go all existential. Again, it's that fight between being animal man versus man. When such rejections come up, that's what is happening in our own minds, that these questions arise. So in fact, in the name of secularism, we reject all connections to religion. But here, when we look at the very definition of Vedas, the science of explaining life itself means we should very well study it. That all these religions are meant to examine the deeper ways of life. So why not study it? So when we say nityam, again, nityam, if we see the actual Sanskritam word, it's eternal, long-lasting, everlasting, always. I'm taking each of those synonyms and adding a different connotation to it. Infinite, always. So that's why it gets translated as every day. Study the Vedas every day. But honestly, it should hold on to that bhava of as long as I need it, I should continuously study. Because how long do I live my life? 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, not a moment am I not living my life. As soon as I stop living my life, I'm not alive. That is what's being meant by nityam. At least in this particular context, nityam, I am living my life constantly. And if I have Vedas and knowledge system that talk about life, then should I not study it always as well? So it has to match the needs. Unlike other subject matters, if I'm studying biology, chemistry, or any of these new sciences, when do I have to study it? Right before the exam, as long as I need it to deliver for that exam, and then I'm done. I can wash my hands of it. So when can I wash my hands of the Vedas that speak about life? When I've transcended life itself, is it not? So until then, as long as I live, let me study this, because it itself speaks about life. So Vedas means a science of life. And when we say science of life, is it only spiritual knowledge? Or does it contain more than spiritual knowledge? It definitely contains all aspects. When we say life, you can't just speak about one aspect of it. We have to speak about all aspects of it. So Vedaha, the root word in Sanskritam for Vedaha is vid, to know. So knowledge per se. So it's not just spiritual knowledge, it is all kinds of knowledge. In fact, in the Vedas, when we speak about knowledge, there are two types of knowledge. Apara and para. Para means the great. Apara means the other than great. So we put one on top of the other. Para vidya and apara vidya. These are two classifications. And what is in apara vidya? All the different sciences. We'll get into it a little bit here. All the different sciences. So the most common one comes up as Ayurveda Shastra, Jyotisha Shastra, Shilpa Sutras, or Chitra, or architecture. I'm translating that. Or Niyamas, or Dhanu Shastra, or Nitya Shastra. Any aspect of this worldly living that is being examined, all of that falls under Apara-vidya. Now, let's not underestimate that this is the lower science. That's not the point here. How vastly have they examined each and every aspect of this life? I'll give you one small example. In Bhagavatam, there is one section that goes through the development of the embryo within the womb. And when does the jiva enter? What is the bhava or experience of that embryo before birth? They even talk about how there are 7 layers of the charma, the skin. How many are doctors or have studied medical science? Especially the epiderm, derm. How many layers of skin do you mention? 5? About that, right? We are come to that understanding, but that was already written in our Shastras beforehand. Now, that's just in the scriptures. If you go to the temples, there's specific temples that physically depict this embryo, and their skill is so good that in the stone they're able to carve these 7 layers of skin. So that is the Ayurveda Shastra, but also the skill sets in Shilpa Sutras or Chitra Sutras. How do I actually carve this out? Meaning, they have not left anything unstudied. And they have not left anything undeveloped. All of this sits under Aparavidya, the lower knowledge. So now what could be this higher knowledge? Anything that pertains to that which sustains all of this. And I'm forgetting where it's coming from, but the quote in my head is, what is that by knowing I know all else? I think it's Kena Upanishad, if I'm not wrong. What is that knowledge that if I learn that, I learn everything else? Because in the highest level of analysis, Ishvara, Brahman is that substratum. It is like that canvas. It is on that this variety of colors, this variety of life sits on top of. So instead of wasting my time learning every single thing in its entirety, if I go straight to the source, if I know the canvas in its essence, I know anything that can come on top of that canvas. What is that knowledge which I know will make me know everything else? That is the relationship between para and apara vidya. All of this is contained in the Vedas. So again, how often should we study this? Eternally. It has everything. It honestly has everything I need. So there was one other example that I found funny. When we say it has all kinds of knowledges, even how to harm others is also given. What? To harm others? Dhanu Shastra, Ashtra, what is it? Shastra and Astra. There we go. The shas and sas. Astra and Shastra. That science of how to wield weaponry is given. But it's not just here's a manual of how to build things. It even shows when to use it, why to use it, how to use it. What is the right context? When is it justified to use this? So any science that's given is not just dry knowledge that's given. It thinks about all aspects of using that particular thing, and it's given. So, it also can give us instructions on daily life. I'll give one example. Suram na pibeti is a very important instruction given. Often when those that are just entering Hinduism, coming from a different religion, will immediately ask, do you have commandments? Your answer should be no. We have highly intelligent advice. Highly intelligent advice. Because it is up to us to take it up. Commandments, we're not children to be told what to do and what not to do and given repercussions. Shastras are encouraging us to grow up and make our own choices. We have highly intelligent instructions. One of them is, Suram na pibeti. Do not drink liquor. Do not drink alcohol. Why is this? Because immediately we're like, what? But there's so many exceptions. I think the, Kshatriyas, they can drink alcohol. Isn't that given in the Shastra? See, that's justified. Again, it's the selective choosing and digesting of the Shastra to justify our own ego. So that does not count. Suram na pibeti. Why is that given as an instruction? Because if we look at, this is again, an animal man who has grown up and matured, who is seeking a higher way of living. He is therefore now called as a sadhaka. I am seeking that higher. Because I have that goal in mind, here's a path that will help me get there. Again, I have to put this context because even Shastras say if you don't want moksha, you don't want freedom, fine, go experience the other half. It is up to you. But if you want that, then remember these are all the things that will help you get there. And if you're a sadhaka, suram na pibeti. Because what is the point of sadhana is that day by day, act by act, I am controlling my mind. I need power over my own mind so that when I tell it what to do, it does it without question. There are two phrases that has been drilled into our head in our Vedanta course. The point of any sadhana we have is chitta ekagrata and chitta shuddhi. Those two words are like tattoos on my mind. Chitta ekagrata means that I have this ability to be concentrated, that I have the ability for my mind not to wander from even the silence between thoughts. It has the ability to not even wander from the silence between thoughts. Concentration. Chitta shuddhi. I am not influenced by any forms of instinct, vasana, desires, or hatred. Two words, right? In assembly we learned today. A sannyasi is one who is nirdvandvaha, not affected by the dualities. And the two duality is kankshati and dveshti. I am not pulled in either directions. That is shuddha. That is the main goal of any sadhana. So now when an instruction like this, suram na pibeti, don't drink alcohol. Doesn't it make sense why they would give such an instruction? Because when we drink alcohol, we lose control. We succumb to its influence. We no longer have control over our own minds. And the repercussions of drinking is we get addicted to it and we sink lower and lower and lower into far worse state than even an animal. Isn't this the opposite of direction of what we were trying to achieve? So, suram na pibeti, if you genuinely want to be free, then let us learn how to control our mind, and I will avoid anything and everything that will make me lose control over my own mind. So now that context makes so much more sense. Now what about this exception? Why is it that Shastra gives exceptions? Because they understand what the role of that person is. What are they trying to accomplish? Kshatriya are also led by dharma. Right? Very beginning of Bhagavad Gita, chapter 1, Arjuna was meant to be on the battlefield to fight for dharma. Now, in order to protect dharma, to fight, is a very challenging circumstance. None of us know what it's like unless we've been a soldier in combat on the field. None of us know what it feels like. The kind of stress and impact it has on the body, mind, and intellect, they are having to perform at an inhumane standard. Even then, if alcohol is used, it is for a specific purpose. It is like medicine at that point. So again, it is not an indulgence, it is not an enjoyment, it is treated as a medicine for a specific ailment that they are experiencing because of the circumstances they're in. Even that has been outlined if the exception is given. Again, it is all within control. How and when I need it is well defined. So at the end of the day, can we put any argument saying, well, Shastras say I can drink? Can that argument ever be made in any of this context? No. So, Shastras tell us both the do's and don'ts, and any of those instructions given is supported by the guidelines of how to use it. In other words, when you hear tantra or mantra, those two words often get thrown around. Mantra is the tools. It is the powerful thing that is being used. Tantra is the techniques to use it. So not only they give you the tool, but they also give you the manual that goes with the tool. So in the same way, any instruction that's being given, there's also a context and reasoning that is also being given. So it has to be studied well. Now, the Vedas, plus its supporting knowledges, there are 14 spheres of wisdom, or 14 spheres of knowledge. So Vedas doesn't just mean 4. What's our classic answer? What are the books of your Hindu religion? They say, oh yeah, Vedas, we have 4 books. Again, it's the trying to shove Hinduism into a box that we don't fit into. All Vedas, there are 14 spheres, and they're organized into 4 categories, which is Rig, Yajur, Sama, and Atharva Veda. But there are also all other branches of studying, so the 14 includes these 4. What are these 14 that we're talking about? The Vedas take us to Bhagwan. It is the swabhava of the tradition. Any aspect, any shastras that we study revolves around Bhagwan. Even things like Nritya, Nritya shastras, when we see them perform arangetrams, don't we always have an altar on that stage? And is the sadhaka who's performing, is he performing to the audience or is he performing to the Bhagwan that's on the stage? In older times, it was done in temples. Why? Because the performance was done to the Bhagwan in that temple. So this is a minor thought I had, that whenever we are at arangetrams and we start clapping, it kind of misleads us, right? In that idea that it's not for us that this person is performing, it's for Bhagwan. So whenever bhajans are being played, I'm hesitant to clap. I know I need to encourage them, that's the purpose of it, but it almost feels like, let's say, Shri Sadguru Nath Maharaj Ki Jai. It's a congratulation but acknowledgement of why this is being done. So Bhagwan, Vedas are always meant to take us to Bhagwan, and is the very swabhava of that tradition. But to get to Bhagwan, we need to go through the world. So it is the world that cures us of all of our mental diseases, and its interaction with the world that makes us a perfect diamond. It is the interaction with the world that makes us that perfect diamond. And I like the word diamond because we're all made of carbon, right? But unless and until it is put under that heat and pressure, does it not transform itself to become diamonds. Until then, we're just wasted away, can even be as useless as ash, because that too is also carbon. So in the same way, when we say viveka and vairagya, it is not to say I'm rejecting the world is all an illusion, I don't need it, I need to give it all up in order to reach Bhagwan. Bhagwan says you got it all wrong. go through the world, go through the pressures and the experience of the challenges in the world so that it reforms and refines. Again, what's the two words? Chitta ekagrata and chitta shuddhi. That is making us into diamonds. Then we can shine like that diamond. So it is important to go through the stages of life, the student life, the householder life, then the quote-unquote retirement, and then into renunciation. So brahmacharya, grahastha, vanaprastha, and sannyasi. This is the life of knowledge, honestly. So when it comes to student life, as we saw last week, that we have to equip ourselves with what is required to do to fulfill our desires that are natural to us. Again, instantly a red flag went in my head. I said, what do you mean, fulfill desires that are natural to us? Aren't we talking about getting rid of kama? Why is it that they're saying this? Because if we have natural tendencies that we have not grown out of, trying to tap it and tame it and shove it into a box and pretend it doesn't exist, what will happen? It explodes. It will become even worse. I will suffer through it. So when they say here that we must fulfill our desires that come naturally, it means deal with it in an appropriate way, in such a way that we grow out of it naturally and in a healthy manner. In self-unfoldment, Puja Gurudev says, do not suppress, but sublimate. Sublimate, that's when, by the way, Karma Yoga steps in right here. That I take whatever natural tendencies I have, but I do it for a selfless reason. Again, the ego is not important. Higher ideals help me grow out of it. So to fulfill my desires that come natural means to elevate it so that eventually I grow out of it and grow up. So the householder life now is to fulfill those desires and at the same time understand that as I fulfill them, I have to fulfill them through the life of dharma. Life of dharma. As we do that, we find out that these desires are actually not required for my happiness. My mind withdraws naturally, and I'm no longer interested in this or that of the world. This is what's supposed to happen to us when we go through grahastha. Again, don't take it in a negative connotation. Oh, I'm done with this life. There's only problems. My spouse is a problem. My children are a problem. My job's a problem. I'm done. That's the, dukkha vairagya. And that's not real vairagya. Why? Because we are fallen to the side of dveshti. I gave it up because I hate it. Does that make me a sannyasi? Nirdvandvaha na kankshati na dveshti. So it is a much more elevated reason why I've given it up. It comes through maturity. Where, like, even if we look at from childhood into grahastha life, there were so many things I was attached to when I was a kid. I have to have my blankie, my pinky, or whatever, they always have cute words for those. But they have to go around with it all the time. And if it gets lost, the whole world crumbles. Am I still like that? No. Of course I've grown out of it, but is it because I've come to hate my blanket, I don't want it anymore, and it's because of that dukkha vairagya that I gave it up? No. In fact, if I found it again in one of those storage boxes way up in my attic, I'd be like, oh, I remember when I used to like this. It's out of nostalgia we look back on it. It's that healthy, happy manner of maturity where I say, I don't need this anymore. It is what it is. I don't need it anymore. I'm not dependent on it. That's a healthy maturity, and that's what has to come out of grahastha. If we've seen, especially our elders, who are amazing to learn from, what is their most prominent characteristics? Or in our high school words, they're so chill. What comes? They're so stable. Our spouses, our in-laws, we can have family feuds in the house. They'll be in the dining room. They will listen to everything. They will have the best advice to deal with it, but they are so unaffected and, unmoved. Why? Because they've gone through life, they've experienced it, they understand the true gains and losses of what that situation is, and they've come to be independent of it. That's the stage of maturity of going from grahastha to vanaprastha. That's what Grahastha will help us do. Grow up and deal and sublimate whatever naturally comes to us. So Vanaprastha, even though the mind is withdrawn, they're now, because they no longer are distracted or attracted by the world outside, they've grown up out of it. Now that I have time with me, what am I supposed to do with it? In Vanaprastha, even though mind has withdrawn from the world, the mind has yet to learn the art of concentration. So self-discipline to the life of Vanaprastha is becoming an important stage. Even the word Vanaprastha, Vana means forest, Prastha means the one who lives in the abode of the forest. Now, why is this symbolism used in that very name itself? Because I've withdrawn from the world, I go into a place that is quiet and peaceful, recluse. But what are they doing in the forest? They're not like Bear Grylls, like, going through like extreme adventures in the forest. That's not what's happening. They've learned that they're settled down and they are now taking the opportunity to practice upasana. Upasana becomes the most important skill set at this point. That prayer, japa, and worship to purify the heart, to concentrate the heart. So again, I'll come back to the two phrases, right? Chitta ekagrata and chitta shuddhi. Chitta shuddhi actually comes first. I have to make sure that my mind is gotten rid of kangshati and dveshti. Then I can now take my energized mind, meaning I'm not wasting it in either of these sides. I have good energy now. Now let me apply it in the direction I'm supposed to. Applying it is that concentration. So grahastha ashrama, when I'm growing up, maturing out of all of these natural desires I have, that is shuddhifying my mind, that I'm making it pure. Vanaprastha now is when I apply it to something higher, where japa and upasanas are taken to hone in on the skill of concentration. So to purify the heart is in grahastha. Enough is enough is kind of the feeling that comes up. Then what more? What else? How long do I have to do this? I have to start getting ready. And therefore, when I start applying myself to preparation of the highest, I am now really living that spiritual life, that higher way of life, and it is a preparation. So, this mental discipline develops at this point. Upasana chitta ekagrata. The prayer is a mental discipline. Standing in front of Bhagavan and picturing him is also a discipline in itself. So it reminds me of when we do Aarti, right? I still find it hilarious when our high schoolers and students get up there and they're looking at each other with the thali going in between. I'm like, do y'all know that this is for Bhagavan over there? And today I was just noticing that again, and luckily our teachers knew how to face because they understood what it was for. So I'm still like itching to I think we need to correct that for them, actually tell them what Aarti is all about. Aarti means that with this divine light that is a witness to my prayers, I would love to see the form of Bhagavan in every detail possible. In the temples, they don't have major floodlights or whatever fancy lighting we have nowadays on stage. That's not how temples are. The room gets smaller and smaller and smaller until it's this dark space that you have to squeeze into, climb over your parent's shoulder just to see Bhagavan. And it's in this dark room. And it is in that room that a diya is lit, and that's to the Maha Mangala Aarti. That's the best part. They have 5, 6, 7, whatever is the auspicious count. They'll light that, and the way they do it, right, is they'll start at the feet. They'll wave the light back and forth so that you can see the feet being highlighted. Slowly, they will take it up the form to the hand. So you can see, and especially some temples, you'll be able to see the glistening of the nails on Devi or Bhagavan. What's happening to our mind? The rest of the world is falling away. That mind is getting so absorbed into that image that nothing else can capture that mind. That Aarti is leading the mind across that form, one aspect at a time. That is a mental discipline. but it's done so lovingly that we can't help but fall into it if we really understand. So that is the beauty and compassion and shraddha that our shastras have to offer us. They know what it takes to capture the mind. That's why so many of these traditions, learning it and the meaning behind it becomes so beautiful. But that focus and concentration, this is through Vanaprastha ashram. This is what's really developed. Now, here's one caveat. A lot of times people say, I will only take up spirituality life at the end of my life. Right? I'll deal with the world. I really want to achieve something and make a name out of myself during my prime of my life. Then I'll give it up, and then I'll go into Vanaprastha, and I'll start my spiritual life then. What's the problem in today's age? Because in that sentence, it seems to match what we were just talking about. But the problem is, Brahmacharya ashram wasn't done well. Meaning, we didn't have the right mind frame to understand why I'm going through Grahastha ashram, why I need to enter into Vanaprastha, and to have the self-discipline since Brahmacharya. I cannot start developing a morning routine when I'm 60 if I hadn't already done that when I was 12. At Vanaprastha has to be the next, I think of a loaded diving board, right? That Brahmacharya and Grahastha is the pressure we keep so that it comes down and is gathering energy, so that in Vanaprastha, because I continue the discipline, I can springboard. If I haven't pushed down on that board, I'm not going anywhere. So in the same way, when we say the concentration and development, it has to be a momentum that has been built since the beginning. But now we ramped it up to level 10 is what happens in Vanaprastha. I have nothing else to distract me. I have nothing else to do. I will take what skill sets I've learned and I will amplify it here because this is it. This is the last leg. Let me do it. So finally, when we withdraw from other distractions, we gain energy. We've stopped worrying about the past. We stopped worrying about the future. We stopped worrying about our own ego. That's such a relief in its own self. To get rid of that, I gain energy. Now I start applying it and elevating it to the highest. When that connection really develops, this is when that yaha pashyati saha pashyati comes back. That it is that focus on knowledge of renunciation where we are able to totally give up all pleasures, all false identification, and really come to experience my own self without any other instrument through which to know. An anubhuti, swabhava anubhuti. Therefore, meditation is where we really practice it during sannyasi, but meditation up until that point is this is my way of understanding meditation. There's two ways of looking at the word itself. Meditation as the verb or meditation as the noun. Meditation as a verb is when we sit in the seat of meditation, concentrating on the Mahavakya and saying, Neti, Neti, I am not this, I am not this, I am not this, and I assert, Aham Brahmasmi, Soham. That constant focus on who I truly am and letting all else drop away is the verb of meditation. But when we have successfully accomplished it, I have nothing more to do. Who is there to do? I am me. Is there any subject, verb, or object in the state of being? It is, even in English, to be is considered as a verb, but really it's the root of all other verbs. And it's not really a verb because you're not doing anything. So even linguistically, if you analyze that, to be is the most special verb because it is a state of not doing anything. It is a recognition. That is the success and the flight that, I'm using Puja Gurudev's words in his work, that this is the ultimate flight that we've taken on. We've entered that realm that cannot be even reached. So, these steps, these 4 steps that we're talking about, are a must in this culture. Don't jump from one to the other without completing it. There are some exceptions that are given, but that is because they have gone through the mental stages that we're speaking about. And so what naturally fits their stage of development is what is often prescribed. So again, we sat and looked at the 3 words. Vedaha is the knowledge. Nityam is always, because it talks about our life, adhiyatam, how well to study, because it is the growth and experience through the 4 ashramas that we have studied these Vedas. So we'll see more about this going forward. Hopefully I'll reach the second instruction next week, but we'll see. So with that, Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha Harihi Om. Thank you so much. Please do come tonight. We still have Jnana Yajnas with Swami Swarupananji, so we would love to see everyone come out here.